Joining us now is our newsmaker for this evening, the CEO of the NITI Aayog, Amitabh Kant. Mr. Kant, always a pleasure having you on CNBC TV 18. Let me start by talking to you about the Global Mobility Summit that the NITI Aayog is organizing, which will kickstart next week, sir. Now, the emphasis is, of course, going to be on the roadmap for electrification, but you're also going to look at solutions for public transportation, data, mobility, shared mobility, etc. Give me a sense of what can be expected. It is going to be this big event, but what is the tangible outcome at the end of it?
So, Shereen, India is very, very different from other parts of the world as far as electric mobility is concerned, largely because 76% of the total vehicles are two-wheelers. We have another 5 to 6% three-wheelers. We have another about 6% are buses and public transport systems, and then there are four-wheelers. So I think the challenge for India is really to push that we are able to convert all our two-wheelers into electric, and even if you are able to do batteries on them and they are able to go about 100-odd kilometers and then do slow charge at home, you would have transformed India. And push for battery, and on three-wheelers, if we are able to do battery swapping, that will be a big thing. And for buses, to my mind, within the cities, you need a cleaner form of gas and CNG, and for movement from city to city, you need to push for LNG. And once you've done that, and then push for sharing and connected mobility on the four-wheelers. And the other key challenge for India is really to move away from capital expenditures, so that we have buses and public transport systems which can be done on OPEX, operating expenditure, rather than capital expenditure. And that is some scheme which NITI is pushing for.
Okay, there are several things that you brought up there, sir. Let me address them one by one. From what I understand, the emphasis now seems to be on getting two-wheelers to convert into electric as well as buses. So the emphasis of moving cars to EVs, that seems to be pushed back a little bit, at least from what I am given to understand from what you are saying today. What is the way forward? Are you going to incentivize this? Is there going to be a carrot and stick approach? How do you get the two-wheeler industry to move to electric?
No, we are not pushing anything backward. We also feel that four-wheeler cars we need to ensure that there is a movement towards electric vehicles. But if you look at the economics of it, and you can't do everything through a stick, my belief is that economics must work, and everybody in India must understand that it's economics which is going to make it work. And if you look at the internal combustion car versus electric vehicles, today the electric vehicle is far more costly. The total cost of ownership is far more expensive, largely because the cost of battery is very high even today. And you need to make the cost of battery fall. And that, to my mind, by 2026, several studies, various studies show that by 2026, across the world, you will have the cost of electric vehicle on par with, for four-wheelers, you'll have them on par with internal combustion car, and that's the point when it will take off in a very big way. Because my belief is that you can't subsidize large scale for four-wheelers. You need technological disruption to take place on that. But as far as two-wheelers and three-wheelers are concerned, you have the total cost of ownership has already fallen. And my belief is that since in India, unlike rest of the world, because in India you have only as far as cars are concerned, you have only 20 cars per 1,000 people, whereas in USA it's 950. But 76% of our vehicles are scooters, and another 6% are three-wheelers. And therefore, this is something where the cost has already fallen. And we need to ensure that we are able to quickly transform the two-wheelers and three-wheelers into electric vehicles.
Mr. Kant, I think this is for the first time that we're hearing from government an acknowledgement that the current cost structure for four-wheel electrification does not work. You're hoping that by 2026 the cost will be comparable with the IC engine, but this is a first acknowledgement of the government that the economics doesn't work. The second important issue that you brought about was that you don't believe that it would make sense to subsidize or hugely subsidize. I don't know what kind of subsidies the government is eventually going to look at, because there's a lot of policy confusion on that. Four-wheelers. So are we given to understand that a bulk of the subsidies, the lion's share of the subsidies, will be allocated to two-wheelers, three-wheelers and buses?
So, Shereen, see, if you were to start subsidizing personal transportation on a very large scale, the cost to our mind will be fairly exorbitant. We've done that number crunching. And
what is that number, sir? What is that number?
No, well, I mean, it's not correct to reveal everything, but our view is that what the country needs to push for is public transportation. We need to really push for public transportation, and we need to make people move towards a sharing, connected and a zero-emission world, and zero emission in a gradual manner. You can't, it has to be over a time frame, but sharing, connected, yes. And therefore, the buses is something, public transportation is something which we definitely, the government would like to support in a very big way. The government would like to support two-wheelers, the government would like to support three-wheelers, and the government would like, definitely, this is something which is very easily doable, and the government would like to push for technological disruption so that people move towards a sharing and a connected world, as far as, and that's something which will be good for the society. So we need to look at the impact in terms of pollution, we need to look at it in terms of technology, and we need to push for both.
Again, sir, I come back to my point, and I will ask you to address it very simply. I go back again to the comments that you just made, that you would like to, the government would like to support two-wheelers, three-wheelers and technological disruption in the sector. Again, there has been a lot of talk about subsidies even to four-wheelers as part of the FAME policy, which could be unveiled along with the Mobility Summit. That was what we were given to understand. So are we clear that government subsidies will go to two-wheelers, three-wheelers and buses, and that four-wheelers may or may not get subsidy from the government? And what is this number that will finally be allocated towards subsidizing electric mobility?
No, so Shereen, I'm not saying that four-wheelers will not be supported, but four-wheelers would be supported as long as it should be for the sharing and a connected four-wheeling vehicle. And that would, because after all, the total kitty available to the government is restricted. Rather than ensuring that every individual car is subsidized, we should push for those vehicles which are going to push for sharing and connected world of India for tomorrow. And that would help us have many more people benefit, and that would help fall in CO2 emissions for a larger number of vehicles.
Okay. Before we move on from the issue of mobility, sir, give me a quick snapshot of what and who we can expect at the Mobility Summit. Who are the big manufacturers that will be showing up there?
Well, just about everyone. I think, to my mind, all the top Indian companies, the Mahindras, the Tatas, the Suzuki CEO, the Suzuki chairman, the Toyota chairman, and Masayoshi Son from Japan, and the CEOs of Bosch, ABB, all of them. I mean, just about everyone from the mobility world would be here in India during that period. The CEO of flying cars for Uber, and many, many more. The Ford, the president of the sharing mobility of the Ford, and many, many more. I mean, just about everyone. You'll have all the top players of India here. Okay, that's good to know. And of the world. That's good to know, sir. Let me also very quickly get your comments on an area where, again, there seems to be policy confusion, sir, and this has to do with the e-commerce draft. Now, the draft has gone back to the government for review after the feedback that came in. You were fairly critical of the way that the draft had been put together. Now,
Do you believe that the need of the hour is to encourage competition, and these differential rules where you say that there should be one set of rules for foreign companies and one set of rules for Indian-controlled and Indian-owned companies make sense today?
You know, Shereen, I look at e-commerce from the perspective that we are still at the beginning stage. We are the total turnover of e-commerce is about 32 billion in India. It's about 435 billion in the United States. In China, it is at 1 trillion. The speed at which we are pushing for digitization, the government's pushed for it. You know, the number of mobile phones that we have, the number of bank accounts that we have, and the rapid digitization process in India will push for e-commerce. And therefore, you know, we need to create a vast number of jobs in India. We create only about 100,000 jobs in India right now through e-commerce. I think this can expand by about 100x. It can be the biggest job creator in India. 100x increase in number of jobs. And that is what we should aim for by 2022. Secondly, it's a sector which can greatly benefit our Indian handloom, handicraft, our traditional craftsmen, all of them. And therefore, we need to push the limits on this in terms of greater level of investments coming in. So our objective should be, how do we make e-commerce simpler? How do we make it easier? How do we allow you know, a lot of investments to come in? And how do we allow a lot of more jobs
do you believe, sir,
to happen in this sector?
So let me then ask you two specific questions. Do you believe it's wrong for the government and this draft e-commerce policy to focus so much on discounting and pricing, as well as the need for a separate regulator for e-commerce? Do you believe that that's a bad idea?
You know, it's not government's job to get into discounts. It's not government's job to get into pricing. Any government official will tell you this. Government's job is to create the right facility environment, the right policy framework where we allow the e-commerce sector to grow and blossom in India, so that we can create many more jobs and so that it can benefit our producer, so that it can benefit Make in India, so that it can benefit all the manufacturers of India. And that is what we'd like it to grow and flourish. I mean, it can create a massive amount of employment simply because our, you know, traditional handicrafts, handloom, all our products, medium and small enterprises, all of them will get access to electronic marketing. I mean, that is what we should push for, and just be a facilitator and a catalyst to enable that to happen. That is, government's job is not to get into discounts and say somewhere 10%, somewhere 20% discount. That's not our job. It's not a government job to get into pricing. Those are things which the market must take care of.
Sure. My final question to you, Mr. Kant. You know, the DIPP Secretary believes that the FDI Press Note 3, which governs the e-commerce space, has been violated, that there have been several violations that need to be looked into. Do you believe that there is a need to review certain aspects of Press Note 3?
You know, the Press Note 3, we in India consciously at one stage took a policy that we will allow marketplace e-commerce. We don't allow inventory holding. And that is simply because we felt that if there's a marketplace, then people will not tamper with pricing, people will not do inventory stocking, so that they do not you know, promote and market only one single product. And to my mind, marketplace e-commerce is a better methodology to enable the market to be at a distance from buyer and seller. That was a conscious call taken. And as long as that is the policy, everybody must prescribe to that policy framework.
Well, Mr. Kant, always a pleasure, sir. Appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV 18 with your thoughts on the Mobility Summit, which kicks off in the first week of September, as well as the e-commerce policy, which is currently a work in progress. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll take a break. There's a lot more coming up. Don't go anywhere.